Okay. So, welcome for today's discussion. So, today's question we are going to discuss is, you can note down the question. Was Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 a success or a failure? Was the 1857 mutiny a success or a failure? So, this is a question I am going to discuss today from the point of view of mains examination. Now, to begin with, how to analyze the question. All of you know very well that the landmark event that took place in the history of our country is the mutiny of 1857, started by Mangal Pandey, the soldier from Awadh, who shot dead his higher officer Major Hudson on March 29, 1857, in a place called Barakpur in Bengal, and later on several other people also joined it, like the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar II, Jhansi ki Rani Lakshmi Bai, Begum Hazrat Mal of Awadh, and deposed Peshwa Nana Sahib also participated, and his right hand guerrilla war expert Tantia Tope, and the lone Jamindar who participated in the mutiny, conversing, the only landlord who participated from Jagdishpur in Bihar. So all these people participated, you know that already. And our historians, especially V.D. Savarkar, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, described it as the first war of India's independence. He called it as first war of India's independence, and even he wrote a book with the same title. The title of the book is First War of India's Independence, and even today it is an authentic book on the event by V.D. Savarkar. But in spite of all these things, if you look at overall on the incident that took place, can we call it as a success or can we call it as a failure? That is a question asked for you, and you have to write the answer convincingly. Now the answer goes like this. You have to start your answer saying that yes, it was a success. Sepoy Mutiny was definitely a success. Why I call it as success? Because number one, it led to the end of East India Company rule in India. Number one, it ended the rule of British East India Company in India. Because the East India Company started ruling in India since 1773, Regulating Act. Since the Regulating Act 1773, Britishers started ruling, East India Company started ruling. But now after the Sepoy Mutiny, the company rule ended in 1858, and Queen Victoria, who was ruling England at that time, she made a declaration which is famous as Victoria Declaration. As it was done in the month of November, it is called November Declaration. And the first Viceroy, Lord Canning, called it as a Magna Carta for the Indian people. Lord Canning was the Viceroy at that time. He described it as the Magna Carta for the Indian people. So if you look at this angle, definitely we can say that the mutiny was a success because the East India Company rule permanently ended. And after this we are not going to discuss about East India Company in India. And now we are going to be ruled directly by the British Crown. We are going to be ruled by the British Crown, which simply means we are going to be ruled by the British government directly. And as a mark of change, they changed the title. Now onwards, we are going to call this fellow as the Viceroy of India. Earlier they were called as Governor General of India, but from 1858 till 1947, we call them as the Viceroy. And Lord Canning became the first Viceroy of India. Lord Canning became the first Viceroy. So, changing of authority from a private limited company, a merchant's company, to the British government directly is definitely a very significant change and a very clear-cut success for our mutineers. And it was in a way a setback for the East India Company, the company that ruled for 100 plus years. Now it has to get back to England and hand over the reins of authority to the British government. So this is at the outset, you can say it is a success, number one. Point number two, why it is a success? Because the British Queen announced that now onwards the administration of India will be looked after by a council known as India Council. It is known as India Council with 15 members headed by Secretary of State. The head of the council was called Secretary of State for India, and Lord Stanley was appointed as the first Secretary of State for India under the Victoria Declaration, and 15 members were appointed to the India Council. And Secretary of State for India was made as a cabinet member in the British cabinet. He was a member in the British cabinet, and he was accountable to the British Parliament. Secretary of State was accountable to the British Parliament. The India Council was accountable to the British Parliament. So to that extent, the principle of responsibility, accountability was ensured through the declaration. And if you are good in polity, you will understand this point also. Because now India is coming under the rule of the India Council, all the subsequent acts are going to be known as Council Acts, right? Before this, earlier how you were calling the acts, they were called as Charter Acts. Charter Act of 1813, Charter Act of 1833, Charter Act of 1853, like that, earlier. But after the Sepoy Mutiny, these acts are going to be labelled, called as Council Acts. And many students do not know why it is called Council Acts. Answer is this point. An India Council was created to take care of the administration, and this council is going to make laws for India. Therefore, these acts are called as India Council Acts. And 3 Council Acts are important from your examination point of view. Number 1, the Council Act of 1861. Number 2, the Council Act of 1892. Number 3, the Council Act of 1909. Council Act of 1909, popularly known as Minto-Morley Reforms. Popularly called Minto-Morley Reforms. Why? Because Lord Minto was Viceroy of India. Lord Minto was Viceroy of India, and Sir John Morley was the Secretary of State. Sir John Morley was Secretary of State, and both of them together drafted the bill. So it is popularly called as Minto-Morley reforms. So therefore, the significant point you have to remember is the creation of the India Council itself. You can call it as the success of the mutiny. Otherwise, this council would not have been created. The council would not have been created if the mutiny was a failure. This is point number 2. Point number 3. The British Queen Victoria also announced that now onwards, Indians will be slowly given representation in the legislative process and in the administrative process of India. Means what? Earlier, the administration was entirely done by the Britishers. Indians did not have any representation at all. But after the Sepoy Mutiny, the Queen Victoria clearly said that now onwards, Indians will get a representation both in the legislature as well as in the executive, both. And this is what you have to remember it like, getting representation for Indians in the process of administration. Earlier, the administration was entirely British, 100% British, no Indian element at all. But now, some kind of representation, I don't say to a great extent, but some minimum representation, token representation is to be given for Indians in the Legislative Council also and in the Executive Council also. And this, the historians call it by another typical phrase known as Indianization of the administration. That's a word you have to underline and remember. Indianization of the administration means Indians slowly started entering the Legislative Council as well as the Executive Council of the Viceroy. But it was not a very big step, but a humble beginning. Why I call it as humble beginning? Because under the Council Act of 1861, 6 nominated Indian members were taken in the council. Only 6. Under the Council Act of 1861, 6 Indians were nominated to the Legislative Council. So this is one step ahead. But later on, under the Council Act of 1892, this number was doubled to 12. Under 1892 Council Act, 12 Indians were nominated to the Legislative Council. And later on, in the Council Act of 1909, that is Minto-Morley reforms, as I told you, one Indian was taken into Executive Council of the Viceroy. One Indian was inducted to the Executive Council of the Viceroy as the 4th member. He was called as 4th member. Why? 3 fellows were already there and they were all Britishers, Europeans. 3 members were already there. The 4th one was Indian, so he is called 4th member. And I hope if your memory is good, you will remember who was the first Indian who entered the Executive Council of the Viceroy in 1909. You know his name. S.P. Sinha, Satyendra Prasad Sinha. So Satyendra Prasad Sinha is the first Indian to enter the Executive Council of the Viceroy. So why I told all these things for you is to understand the point Before mutiny, there was no representation of Indians at all. No one was there. But now at least some Indians got opportunity to enter the Legislative Council, and one Indian was allowed to sit in the Executive Council of the Viceroy. So this is definitely success. You can interpret as the success of the mutiny only, otherwise these things would not have happened. Right? The indigenization of the administration. And as you all know, there is one proverb in English, something is better than nothing. Something is better than nothing. Earlier, even this was not there. Earlier, there was no representation at all, absolutely, for the Indians. Only Europeans were looking after our administration. At least now, some of our members were allowed inside the Executive Council as well as Legislative Council of the Viceroy. So this I clearly say that this is the success of the mutiny, no doubt about it. This is one. Now point number 4. Why we should call it a success? Because Queen Victoria announced after the mutiny that the most controversial decision taken by Lord Dalhousie in 1848 and which actually led to the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, that the most controversial decision of Lord Dalhousie was abolished. The controversial decision of Dalhousie was abolished, and you will be knowing what is that controversial decision. The doctrine of lapse. The doctrine of lapse, 1848. By applying doctrine of lapse, more than 47 principalities were taken over by Dalhousie, starting from Satara in Maharashtra. The first principality to take over was Satara in Maharashtra, and the most VIP principality that was taken over was Jhansi. Jhansi in Uttar Pradesh, 1853, and many more like Sambhalpur, Udaipur, Jaipur, Bikaner, Meerut, Lucknow, and many other principalities were taken one after another by Dalhousie. And in fact, the doctrine of lapse is one of the main important reason for the outbreak of the mutiny. The mutiny happened because of the doctrine of lapse. Suppose if Dalhousie had not implemented the doctrine of lapse, you can certainly say that the mutiny would not have occurred in 1857. Maybe it would have happened another 10 years later or 20 years later, 30 years later, like that. It was Dalhousie and the doctrine of lapse which is directly responsible for the mutiny. And all our Indian rulers, princely rulers, were upset with the doctrine of lapse, including the Peshwa, Nana Sahib, because Nana Sahib also had lost the power, and you know the reason why he lost the power. You know what is the reason why Nana Sahib lost the power? Because he was adopted son of Baji Rao II. He was adopted son of Baji Rao II, who was defeated by the Britishers in the Second Anglo-Maratha War. Who was defeated by the Britishers in the Second Anglo-Maratha War. And he was insulted under the Treaty of Basin. Insulted under the Treaty of Basin, 1804. That is why Nana Sahib had participated in the Sepoy Mutiny. So therefore, when the Queen said that now onwards doctrine of lapse will be cancelled, abolished, and whatever the principality is taken over by Dalhousie will be given back to the respective rulers, to the respective families or royal dynasties. Your territories will be given back. This is definitely a very great plus point of the mutiny. You can say that it is a very clear success of the mutiny because the doctrine of lapse was withdrawn, abolished. And one more point which you should also remember to prove that how it was a success. Lord Dalhousie had taken one more controversial decision. I hope if your memory is good, you will remember what is that decision. In 1856, you know what Lord Dalhousie had done? Abolition of titles and pensions. Okay. Abolition of titles and pension for the Indian rulers, native rulers, including the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II. And Bahadur Shah II was also enjoying title. He was called as a Shahen Shah. He was called as Alamgir. He was called as Darwesh. These are all Urdu words. Alamgir, Darwesh, Shahen Shah. These are all the title of the Mughal Emperor. But Dalhousie said you should not use these titles. And these Peshwa rulers, they were told that you should not use the title Peshwa. Nana Sahib should not say Peshwa Nana Sahib. You should say only I am Nana Sahib, no Peshwa. Peshwa is a title. So Dalhousie had insulted Indian rulers by taking away, withdrawing their titles, which was a big insult, a humiliation for our what is called the rulers. Because these rulers were enjoying the titles as a matter of right for centuries. But now suddenly Dalhousie said, no, I don't allow you to use the title. That was one of the reasons for the mutiny. But now British Queen said, I will give back the titles. You can use the titles as usual, as earlier, you can continue to use your titles. That was definitely the success of the mutiny. And other thing related to the same point is abolition of pension. Abolition of pension, which was done by Lord Dalhousie. But after the mutiny, the British Queen said that now onwards the Indian rulers will get back whatever pension that they were entitled as earlier. Means you will continue to get your money as usual. And this amount was a very huge one, not a small one. When I say pension, don't think that, sir, it was a small amount. No. What is the proof? Mughal Emperor was getting annual pension of 26 lakh rupees at that time. We are talking about 1857. So pension of 26 lakh rupees means now you multiply into 100 because of inflation. Because of at that time 1 rupee means now it is 100 rupee. 1 rupee at that time is equal to 100 rupees in our time. You have to think like that. To 26 lakhs means into 100 you calculate that much of amount was given to Mughal Emperor as pension, annual pension. But that was taken away by Dalhousie. He said that I will not give pension. And even Peshwa, Nana Sahib, he was getting 19 lakh rupees. Nana Sahib was getting 19 lakh rupees annually as pension. But Dalhousie had abolished all these facilities. He said, why should we give pension to Indian rulers? And I don't know if you are good in history, if you have read Bipin Chandra's book, you will understand. he made such a insulting statement, derogatory statement, that Lord Dalhousie said, Indian rulers have become a burden to the British exchequer. You have become a burden for the British treasury. Why should I pay so much of pension for the Indian rulers? Because you have been defeated. Mughal emperor was defeated, Peshwa was defeated, Nawabs were defeated, kings and queens were defeated. We have already conquered you. Why should we pay the pension, annual pension? So you are a burden, liability to the British. Why should we pay? But if you are a good student of history, you know actually who were the burden? Who were the burden? Not the Indian rulers. It was the British East India Company which was a burden on the Indians. That is actually the fact. Our rulers were not the burden. Britishers were a burden on Indian taxpayers. But unfortunately, Dalhousie said, you Indian rulers are good for nothing. Why should I give you pension? And that was one of the main reason why the mutiny has taken place. In fact, you can take a quotation there. Dr. R.C. Majumdar says, I don't want to call these rulers as freedom fighters. Dr. R.C. Majumdar says they are not freedom fighters, they are pension fighters. You can use this quotation in the answer. That is Nana Sahib, then Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai, Begum Hazrat Mal, Mughal Emperor, Bahadur Shah. They were not freedom fighters. Dr. R.C. Majumdar says they were pension fighters. They were fighting for the pension rather than for India, rather than for freedom. So this is a very open remark made by R.C. Majumdar that these people were not freedom fighters, they were pension fighters. So therefore, one important success of the mutiny is, after the mutiny was over, the British Queen said that now onwards we will give back your pension. All of them. Mughal Emperor also got it, Peshwa also got it, and other 47 plus Indian rulers were there. They were all told that now you will get back whatever pension you were getting earlier. Now onwards, no problem for your pension. And my history teacher used to say, the moment they announced that you get pension, the main tension of our rulers was cooled off. Because they were having the tension in the mind, no pension, like that. But the moment they say pension, our rulers became very happy. Okay, acha, we are going to get back our pension as usual. So, if you look at the whole scenario from this angle, it will be very clear to you that because the mutiny took place, all these things happened. All these things happened. If the mutiny had not taken place, then perhaps the doctrine of lapse would have continued, and the denial of pension and titles would have continued, and there was no representation for Indians in the administration. All these things would have continued as usual. And we don't know how long it will continue. It's $1 million question. Whether 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, half a century, we don't know. But it would have continued. But because the mutiny happened, this U-change, U-turn, you can say U-turn started, and whatever our people had lost, they got it back. This is another clear point you have to mention, that we can say that mutiny was a success. And one more last point, in that one more point you note down. You call the mutiny a success because after the Sepoy mutiny was over, the salary of the Indian soldiers was increased. Next point. The salary of the Indian soldiers was considerably, remarkably increased. Why? You can use your common sense and understand why it was increased. Earlier, there was a disparity between the salary of a British soldier and Indian soldier. British soldiers were getting more salary and Indian soldiers were getting less salary. Right? And that is one of the reasons why the soldiers revolted, including Mangal Pandey. Because he said, I am also a soldier, you are also a soldier, why you should get more salary, why should I get less salary? Anyhow, both of us are soldiers. Soldier is a soldier. I am also going to die, you are also going to die. Why Britishers should get more salary, why Indians less? This was one of the main reasons for the mutiny. But now, after the mutiny was over, the British Queen declared that now onwards the salary of the Indian soldiers will also be increased. You will also get more salary. This is definitely success. This is definitely success because the long pending demand of the Indian soldiers was accepted. It was a very long demand. They were fighting for pay increase for a long time. For a long time they were demanding for hike in the salary, but it was not done. But after the mutiny, the British government itself said, you will also get more salary, high salary. And here two types of opinion are there. Historians like R.C. Majumdar says it was a clear success of the mutiny. But historians like P.C. Sarkar and Jadunath Sarkar, J.N. Sarkar, they say, historians like P.C. Sarkar, they say why the salary was increased because the Britishers wanted to avoid one more rebellion in the future. Already you have suffered one revolt. And if you do not increase the salary, again in the future Indian soldiers may do another rebellion or revolt. So in order to prevent any future uprising as a precautionary measure, you can use two words, precautionary measure or preventive measure, they increased the salary so that Indian soldiers, they remain happy, they remain cool, and very important, they remain loyal. Underline the word loyal. They remain loyal to the British government because I am giving you more salary. And after taking more salary, you cannot fight against the British government because they are giving you the salary and you are an employee there. So all these things happen because of the mutiny and nothing else. So by explaining all these points, now I will underline and conclude that Sepoy mutiny was a success, no doubt at all. Sepoy mutiny was a clear success on the basis of these points that I discussed with you now. And I will give you one more last evidence. The opposition party leader in London at that time, Benjamin Disraeli. His name is Benjamin Disraeli, Disraeli. He was a former Prime Minister also of England, Benjamin Disraeli. You know what is his comment on the mutiny? What he said about the mutiny? He says, it is a national uprising. I will quote his words. It is a national uprising by the native people against the misrule of the British. Underline, misrule of the British. Benjamin Disraeli openly says, Sepoy mutiny was a national uprising. Underline the word national. It is not a local one. It is not a local one. National uprising by the native people against the misrule of the East India Company. Underline the word misrule. Means the Britishers themselves are admitting. This is how you have to write the answer. The British government is admitting that our rule in India was misrule. It was a bad rule, not a good rule. And this I am not saying. It is not my statement. It is the statement of Benjamin Disraeli, the former Prime Minister of England, who spoke in the British Parliament that it is a national uprising. Don't call it as Sepoy Mutiny, Sepoy Mutiny. In fact, I don't agree with the title Sepoy Mutiny. And I don't know whether you are good in history. Who called the event as Sepoy Mutiny? The British historian Mellison. Professor Robert Mellison of Oxford University, a historian, he says it is a Sepoy Mutiny. But we never agree that it is a Sepoy Mutiny. Means only soldiers made the fight against the British. No, it's wrong. Why? What you can say, sir, it was started by the soldiers. That I agree. Because it was started first by Mangal Pandey. Mangal Pandey was a soldier in the 29th Infantry Regiment. 29th Infantry Regiment of the British Army, Mangal Pandey from Awadh, the Hindu soldier who revolted first. For that you can say, sir, it was started by the soldiers. That is right, that all of us agree. But you cannot say that it is only Sepoy Mutiny. Because if you call it a Sepoy Mutiny, then why the rulers and emperors, why they participated? For that the British historian Robert Mellison does not give any explanation. And you people also can understand by using your common sense, if it is a Sepoy Mutiny, then why the Mughal emperor participated? Why Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai participated? Why Begum Hazrat Mal participated? Why Nana Sahib, the Peshwa from Marathwada region, why he participated? Why the tribal leader Tantia Tope from Kanpur, the tribal leader Tantia Tope, why he participated? They were not soldiers. None of them was a soldier. Then why do you call it as a Sepoy Mutiny, Sepoy Mutiny? It's not right. So therefore, the point here is, British historians called it as Sepoy Mutiny, but we Indians do not accept that interpretation. For us it is not a Sepoy Mutiny, it was a revolt by the people of this country. And it is accepted by none other than Benjamin Disraeli, the former Prime Minister of England, who openly says it is a national uprising by the natives against the misrule of the British East India Company. So with all these things, finally it is clear for us that the mutiny was a success, no doubt. Mutiny of 1857 was a clear success from all these angles and approaches and viewpoints. But now, before we conclude the discussion, one more extra thing I should tell you. Can we say that it was a failure? Because the question is success or failure. Now I told you how it was a success. Now I will tell you a few things about, was it a failure? Whether mutiny was a failure. For that also you should write yes. Partially yes. You note down like that. Sepoy Mutiny was a partially, not completely, not 100%, partially it was a failure. Why? Why you say that it was a partial failure? Because, number one, the object of the mutineers, the goal of the mutineers was to completely defeat the Britishers and remove the British Empire in India. That was their goal, objective. They wanted to drive out the Britishers from India completely. Now onwards there will be no British rule at all in India. That was their goal. But what happened? After the mutiny, the Britishers continued. The Britishers did not go. And they continued for how many years? 90 years. Because 1857 to 1947. Right? If you calculate from 1857 to 1947, 90 years, almost 1 century. Roughly 1 century. After this incident also, 100 years Britishers were in India. Therefore I said it was a failure. They could not completely drive out the Britishers from the land. To that extent, it was a failure. Point number 2, in the same thing, point number 2. Why we call it as the failure? Because in this mutiny, common people did not participate. Common people, what we call today as Aam Aadmi, what Arvind Kejriwal ji calls it as Aam Aadmi, right? Common people did not participate in the mutiny. Only rulers, emperors, nawabs, queens, they participated, and soldiers, but not the common people. Common people of India did not participate in the mutiny. This was a failure, because if really you are interested to drive out the British rule in India, then common people should have participated. Common people must have participated if really it is a war against the Britishers, because even common people were also not happy with the Britishers. Common man was not happy with the British rule. You already know about it. But no common person participated in the mutiny. They kept away. They kept away from the mutiny. That is a failure. That is a failure. And I will give the reverse example. I will give the reverse example to prove my point. When Gandhiji started the national movement, 1915, Gandhiji arrival from South Africa, when Gandhiji started the freedom movement, the common people of this country, they participated in the freedom movement. Very common people, very normal people participated in the freedom movement from 1915 to 1947. That you can call it as the real freedom movement, led by Mahatma Gandhiji. But here the commoners were completely away from the mutiny. That is failure number 2. Now failure number 3, why I call it as the failure? Because the huge army of the Mughal emperor was defeated so badly by one officer, General Nicholson. Remember the names properly. General Nicholson, Nichholson. General Nicholson of the British Army, East India Company Army, defeated the huge army of the Mughal emperor, led by General Bakht Khan. The name of the general was Bakht Khan, B-A-K-H-T, Bakht Khan. And he was having 1.5 lakh soldiers with him. Not a small number. 1.5 lakh soldiers of the Mughal army, led by Bakht Khan, was defeated within no time by the British officer General Nicholson in Delhi. He defeated them in Delhi. And Bakht Khan was arrested and he was hanged to death. Bakht Khan was arrested and hanged to death by the Britishers. Now what does it show? It shows clearly that the small army of the East India Company was powerful than the huge army of the Mughals. Mughals were having large army, but they were not having modern weapons. They were not having modern guns, modern weapons, artillery guns, grenades, explosives, nothing was there. Our soldiers were using traditional weapons like bows, arrows, swords, talwar and all that. We were not using the modern weaponry. So it proved that the superiority of the British army is responsible for the success of the Britishers and failure of our mutiny. So this is second proof to tell you that the mutiny was a failure. Now the last one, point number 3, with that we'll conclude. The last reason is this Hindu-Muslim unity, because many of the historians say that Sepoy mutiny led to Hindu-Muslim unity, solidarity. Hindus and Muslims, they came together, they fought collectively, like that they say. For example, Mughal emperor was Muslim, Nana Sahib was Hindu, Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai was Hindu, Begum Hazrat Mahal was Muslim. So these Hindu Muslim, they came together and fought. And many of the historians say that this Sipahi mutiny led to Hindu Muslim unity. Hindu Muslim bondage, unity, they say. But I will tell you the interesting point. After the Sipahi mutiny was over, what happened in India? After the mutiny was over, what happened in India? Whether Hindus and Muslims got united or got separated. You know that. As students of history, you know that Hindus and Muslims, they got separated. What is the proof? What is the proof for separation? They created their own party called Muslim League. 1906, Muslim League was started in Dhaka by Prince Aga Khan. The founder, Prince Aga Khan, 1906, Dhaka, Muslim League was started. And later, Hindus and Muslims started getting separated. Especially after Muhammad Ali Jinnah became the president. When Jinnah became the president of the Muslim League in 1930, he started telling openly that Hindus are separate, Muslims are separate. And the last concluding point, you know what happened in 1947? The country was partitioned. India and Pakistan. Pakistan became an Islamic country and Hindustan became a Hindu country. But unfortunately, Ambedkar did not use the word Hindustan in the constitution. He used the word India, that is Bharat. Ambedkar used the word India, that is Bharat. He did not use the word Hindustan. Suppose if Ambedkar had used the word Hindustan, today all these problems that is going on in the country would not have been there. Whether it is hijab issue or hilal issue, Ayodhya issue, Kashi issue, Mathura issue, your Srirangapatna temple issue, Eidgah Maidan issue, lot of things are there. I don't go details into it. All these problems would have been solved if Ambedkar had used the word Hindustan. Hindustan for Hindus and Pakistan for Muslims. Because Jinnah was openly telling that we want Pakistan only for Muslims. And it happened. Partition of India was done in 1947. So therefore, my argument is very simple. If the Sipahi mutiny had led to Hindu-Muslim unity, then why we started quarreling after the mutiny? Right? After the mutiny, we should not have quarreled. We should have become one. Okay, Hindu-Muslim, bhai bhai. You know, in Hindi they say, bhai bhai, Hindu-Muslim, bhai bhai, and we would have worked together. But unfortunately, it did not happen. The divergence, the deviation started becoming more. It is called as a deeper division. Deeper communal division started in the country, and finally it led to the partition of the country in 1947. So therefore, to conclude, what I can say is, definitely the Sipahi mutiny was a failure because it did not establish Hindu-Muslim unity, as some of the historians claim. Historians like Grover and Grover, B.L. Mehta and G.N. Mehta and others, they say mutiny led to unity between Hindus and Muslims, but it was a temporary unity. Ad hoc, we said temporary, for the time being they united, but once the mutiny was over, again the Hindu-Muslim division started getting more. And it ended in partition of India. Ultimately it ended in partition of India in 1947. So therefore, these three things you have to explain to prove that Sipahi mutiny was a failure. From this angle, it was a failure, and in the first part of the discussion I told you why it was a success. So in your answer, you should write both. It was a success because of 1, 2, 3, 4 following points. Then you say it was also partially a failure because of these three issues. Then you have to conclude by saying that Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 was both largely a success, partly a failure. That is how you have to conclude. Largely a success, but partly it was a failure. That is how you have to conclude the answer. Okay. So with that, we'll conclude the discussion today. Today's session will conclude, and in the next session, I will be coming with other questions on modern Indian history. So I hope the discussion was useful for you, and we'll come back in the next session. Thank you.